So the cool thing about when Rachel was up on the scaffolding and scared half to death, the best part about it is yes, she was scared. Yes, she may have wet herself a little bit. Yes, all of that may be true. But the best thing is that by the end of the day, she was hanging off that thing like this. It's amazing what you can do once you get comfortable. And she was leaning out and she was working and she wasn't like strapped in. Is that true? I mean, seriously, because I worked with you at the very end and you were like bold at the end, weren't you?
No, I got down. I was good.
Okay, thanks for ruining that. So if you are a guest here today, I hope you realize we're not a super traditional church. That doesn't mean we're anti-tradition. We just think sometimes all of the tradition can get in the way, and we really want to focus on relationship with God, relationship with others, relationship with God, relationship with others. And so we try to kind of peel back some of the stuff that sometimes makes church somewhat boring or non-engaging. We're not a country club. You don't have to dress the part. You don't have to speak the churchy language, right? And you don't have to have it all together. You just don't. Welcome to Thrive. I hope you feel it today. Anyway, today we are in another message about time. We've been talking a lot about time lately and what you should be doing with your time. And today, the title of the message is When Less is More. And since the first week of this series, we've been talking about specific principles as they relate to time. And today I want to talk about one that relates to those of you in the marketplace, because today was the Invite Your Boss to Church Day. And some of you I know did that, and your bosses are here. My boss is here. Lisa, where are you? No, just kidding. No, I gave her the day off. No, but it was Invite Your Boss to Church Day, and we're going to try to do that every year just because I thought it would be kind of fun maybe to do a little bit more of a leadership talk and less of a sermon, although there is some sermon stuff in here, and I hope that's okay because I know that we have a number of people that work in the marketplace, and we have a bunch of people that work on base, and you oversee people, and you're overseen by other people, and so I just thought maybe it would be kind of neat to do that. And when I was a rookie pastor in Ohio, I always thought that in any job, the thing that you're supposed to do is, you tell them your strengths, you tell them your weaknesses, right? That's what you do in an interview. And then you begin to work on your weaknesses. Once you get hired, that's kind of your deal. You start working on your weaknesses. You try to improve your weaknesses. And the guy that I answered to, the executive pastor at the church, he worked 90 hours a week. Every week. He had 2 twin little boys and 1 wife, and all he did was ever work. He was always at the church, and he was so creative, and he was so driven, and he was so this, and so that. So I thought, well, that's what I am supposed to do. I'm supposed to work on my weaknesses, and I'm just supposed to live at the church. And that was what a good leader was. And so for those first few years, I really did work on my weaknesses. But then I eventually found something out. And I don't know if this has hit any of you, but I figured something out. And what I figured out was this, that my fully exploited strengths, the things that I am good at, which are just a few, I was expecting to hear an amen. The things that I'm good at, just those few things, are far greater value. They are of far greater value to the church, to the organization, than my marginally improved weaknesses. Because I can work on I'm not an admin guy. I do it, but that's not where, that's not what gets me going, right? I'm not an admin guy. I'm not a detail guy. I hope my socks match. Okay. Because I'm just not a detail guy. I'm not. That's not me. And so what I've learned is that my fully exploited strengths help the organization, help the church way more than my marginally improved weaknesses. Does that make sense? Because let's face it, look at your neighbor, and you can tell them this because it's true. Look at them and say, you know what? You're only good at a few things. Ready, go. Okay, this isn't like time to start a fight or anything here. Someone's pulling out the employee manual back there. Okay, listen. Let's face it. You are probably really good at a few things. Now, here's the thing. If you're the kind of the main guy or woman at your job or whatever, your employees already know this, right? This is not news to them. Hold it now. Nobody's writing that down. I thought that was incredibly profound, but okay. The temptation sometimes is to think that in order to be a well-rounded leader, which is a myth in my opinion, I don't think there is really such things as well-rounded leaders, but to be a well-rounded leader, you have to be great at everything. And the truth is, in order to leverage yourself and your organization, whether you own it, whether you're on the board somewhere, whether you're a volunteer in a volunteer organization, whatever it is, you lead something on the base, you manage a department or a division, at every level, the things that you are really good at are far more valuable to your organization than your marginally improved weaknesses. We could stop right there and that would be enough, wouldn't it? Okay, let's stop. Have a good day, everybody. No, we'll keep going. We'll keep going. This week I met a pastor friend of mine, a really good buddy, from out of state. No, not out of state, just out of city. And he was telling me about his church, because here's the thing, his church is stuck. His church is stalled. He's like, man, I don't know what's going on with the church. He goes, it just seems like we can't build any momentum. And and I could see, that he was kind of bummed out about this. And I'm like, well, tell me about your church. And he starts listing all the things that they do. Well, we do a service on Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. We do revivals. We do Power Hour, which I think is like a prayer thing. Then we do VBS and revivals, and then they had like classes that were being offered, and I thought, dude, you are doing way too much. You're trying to be good at too many things. You're offering too many things. You're doing too much, and because of that, you're not honed in on what you guys are really good at. And the thing is, it took me years as a leader to figure this stuff out for me. So today, and by the way, let me just stop. This isn't in the notes, but that's why when somebody calls and says, do you offer divorce recovery? Or do you offer AA? Or do you offer some kind of other recovery group? We don't. We stay in our lane. We do what we are here to do. Those are not bad things. Those are great things. But we can't do everything. And so we send them over to Hope, because Hope does a lot of those classes. If you call me and say, where can I go to AA? I'll say, go to Hope. Right? If you need divorce recovery or grief counseling, go to Hope. That's kind of their deal. That's not our deal. And I'm okay saying that, because we have determined that we're going to be good at a few things and maximize those instead of trying to do everything. So, today I'm going to tell you a story out of Exodus chapter 18. If you have your Bibles, go ahead and get them. If not, it'll be up on the screen, but also you can download Thrive's app, and we have a Bible gateway there. That's really cool. And there's notes in your bulletin as well, I believe. So here's the thing. The story I'm telling you is kind of a subset of a larger story in the Old Testament, and it's just an amazing illustration. And this is where we find that Moses has a consultant. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever worked with a consultant, but sometimes when you work with a consultant, you're like, wow, that was great advice. Other times you're like, you know what? That person really doesn't get where I'm at, and I'm not going to follow the advice. But Moses followed the advice of the consultant, and I want to tell you about that. And he didn't know that this person was a consultant, but by the end of the story, you'll realize that. And so if you have your Bible, open up to Exodus chapter 18. And now most of you have heard of Moses, right? His claim to fame, of course, was that he's the guy who went to Pharaoh and said on behalf of all the Hebrew slaves that you got to let the people go. God has told me, you've got to let the people go. Let them go worship God. Let them be free. They shouldn't be slaves. Let them go. And so then there were all of those plagues and stuff like frogs and gnats and lions and tigers and Green Bay Packers and scrapbooking. Just terrible stuff, right? And there was all these things. And finally, the Pharaoh said, okay, go. And so Moses led the people, right? He led the people. 2 million men, women, and children were leaving Egypt. And guess what they were? They were a slave nation. They had been in bondage for 400 years, and this happened at about 1,500 years before Christ was born. And so they're a slave nation, and they didn't have any government, they didn't have any rules, they didn't have any systems, no organization. Their whole way of thinking was slavery. Because for 400 years, that's what they were. And so here's a couple of million people traipsing through the desert, right? Following Moses, going only where God may know. And God, by the way, did know. But they weren't following Moses, their king, because he wasn't a king. And he wasn't their governor. He wasn't elected. He wasn't trying to make Israel great again. He wasn't talking about China. No, he wasn't doing any of that. He was just a guy that said, let my people go. And the next thing you know, he's out front leading. Some of you that have started a business, you started a business because you had a passion for the business. Next thing you know, you've got employees and now you're leading. And it's like, wow, how'd we get here? Right? And so he's leading 2 million people through the desert with an organization, without structure, and the mentality of slavery. And so after about 4 months into the journey, they come to the foot of Mount Sinai. I think we have a picture of Mount Sinai. That is known as the Mountain of God. And now pretty soon after that event that we're going to read about today, they actually get God's law. Remember that? What part of that do they get? They get the 10 Commandments, right? Moses comes off the mountain, they get the 10 Commandments. So anyway, they get to the foot of Mount Sinai, 2 million of them, and while they're waiting for whatever is going to happen next, Moses receives a visitor. And it's his father-in-law. And his father-in-law's name is Jethro. Come and listen to a story about a man named Jed. Well, Jed's son was Jethro, right? He had a huge bowl of cereal. Anybody know that stuff? Anybody over 40? Okay, so anyway, that's pretty cool. His father-in-law's name was Jethro, and so there you go. You learned something in church today. And apparently when Moses went to Egypt to do the whole thing with Pharaoh, he left his family out in the desert where he actually came from, and so he hasn't seen his wife and his kids for quite a while, and so Jethro, his father-in-law, brings his wife and his kids to see Moses, and they've got these tents set up and stuff, and here's where our story in Exodus chapter 18 begins, and this is, by the way, this is kind of a cool little verse, the way it starts, at least I think it is. Exodus 18 verse 7 says this. So Moses went out to meet his father-in-law and bowed down and kissed him. Now, I don't know about you, but when I would go out to visit my father-in-law, I never really went like this. And here's what I would suggest, Thrivers. The next time you see your father-in-law, you just bow down, you start kissing his hand, and see what that gets you. So, So Moses meets his father, and he kisses him. Anyway, he goes out, and Moses and he get together, and Jethro's like, so Moses, tell me what happened when you went to Egypt. Tell me how it all went down. You got with Pharaoh, you said, let the Hebrew slaves go. What happened? And Moses, he's like telling him all these great things, and he's going, oh, it was so cool. There were like these frogs everywhere. If you like frog legs, you would love it. And he was like, the river turned into blood, and Jethro's going, yeah, whoa, that is amazing. And then I heard something about the angel of death. Oh, yeah, the angel of death came through and wiped out the firstborn. It was terrible. And so he tells Jethro all of this fascinating stuff. And then they go to sleep. And the next day, Moses had what would be considered the first annual Bring Your Father-in-Law to Work Day. The first annual Bring Your Father-in-Law to Work Day. And so Monday, I don't know what day of the week it was, but let's just say it was Monday, his father-in-law decides to join him at work, and what his father-in-law sees is just, it just baffles him. He's like, how can this be? It baffles him, and here's where we kind of pick up the story, and the story starts to pick up a little bit of steam. In verse 13, it says this: the next day Moses took his seat to serve as judge. So now Moses has taken on the role of judge for the people. And we can understand why. They had no government, they had no infrastructure, they had no law, no judge, no authorities. He had served as judge for the people as they stood around him. So here's what would happen. He'd come out of his tent, and people would start making a line. They'd start coming all around him. And then people would start telling him his stories. And then he would be the judge, right? He'd be the judge. And he'd listen to the stories like, well, so-and-so, took my chicken, killed it, and ate it. Or so-and-so pulled the stakes out of my tent and it fell on everybody, right? And so there were all these little things, and Moses was trying to teach and be the judge at the same time. He's like, well, listen, guys, just so you know, you probably shouldn't steal each other's chickens, and don't pull the stakes out. That's probably not. So he's teaching, and then he gives his rulings, and the guy's like, well, that wasn't my teenager. Well, I dare you say that was my teenager. And I think, well, you don't know teenagers. But everything that happens in the camp, the only person they ever go to is Moses. And so imagine this, a couple million people, everybody with a dispute, lines up single file. And Moses is the judge, and he's got to sort all of this stuff out. Exodus 18:14 says this: when his father-in-law saw that all that Moses was doing for the people, he said, would you read this with me? What is this you are doing for the people? Let's read it like we mean it, okay? What is this you are doing for the people? When he saw that all he was doing for the people, he said to Moses, hold it, time out, man. Hold it. 1 second, Moses, take a break here. What are you doing? And now here's where it gets so fascinating. Moses thought he was doing exactly what he thought he was supposed to be doing, right? His father-in-law looked at what Moses was doing and thought, man alive, this is crazy. You're doing exactly what you shouldn't be doing. And Moses going, yeah, but I'm the only authority. I'm the only one that's ever been kind of trained. I was brought up in the house of Pharaoh. I grew up in Egypt. I know stuff. And then it says in 14, it says, why do you alone sit as judge? That's Jethro talking. It's like, why do you alone sit as judge? Why have you taken on the role of judge? Why do you alone sit as judge while all these people sit around you from morning till evening? Now Moses is thinking, well, I thought it was my job. I thought I was being responsible. I am the authority. And then in 15 it says, Moses answered him, because the people come to me. Hey, listen, just because people come to you doesn't mean that they should. And just because you have a line of people behind you doesn't mean that you should answer every single person. Now, this is important for all of us in leadership. Just because everyone knocks on your door, and just because you are the go-to person, doesn't mean you should be. Don't come to me asking about children's ministry at Thrive. Go to Pastor Andy, right? Don't ask me if we have nuts in the communion corner bread because you have a peanut allergy. I have no idea. You go to Joe. I wouldn't know. I have personally liked sesame seeds and all different kind of nuts inside my bread, but that's a different story. Is it wine or is it grape juice? I don't know. Ask Joe. What is it, by the way, Joe? Grape juice. Okay, good. Anyway, Moses answered him. He said, because the people come to me to seek God's will. And then it says, whenever they have a dispute, it's brought to me. And I decide between two parties. And, listen, here's the and I inform them of God's decrees and instructions. So in other words, they come to me with a dispute, and I explain their dispute to them. They explain it to me. We kind of go through it. I try to start teaching them. I level my judgment. And again, telling them, hey, this is why you probably shouldn't steal somebody's chicken or pull the steaks from their tent. He goes, so I'm trying to do all this stuff. And Moses' father-in-law is like, what you are doing is not good. This is really huge, guys. You should write this down. What you are doing is not good. Notice what he didn't say. He didn't say that you're doing a bad job. That's not what he said. Not that you're doing a good job. What you are doing is not good. You're doing a fine job as a judge, but you're not supposed to be a judge. You're not the judge. That's not what God specifically brought you here for. You shouldn't be doing this job. And in verse 18, it says, and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. You and these people who come to you will only wear yourselves out. Moses, you're not just wearing you out, you're wearing your people out. And the way things are going, with this responsibility of being the judge, you have to take on everything. It's a lose-lose. You're doing too much. And some of you are like, yeah, I know what this feels like. Maybe it's your job. It's like, they've got me doing everything because I know how to do everything. And he's saying it's a lose-lose. They are mad because they have to stand in line, right? You have 2 million people and one judge. People stand in line all day, and if you don't get to them, holy smoke, the people become upset. And he's like, Moses, haven't you ever been to Disney World where there's huge lines to go up the Sky Mountain? People freak out when they don't have the fast pass and they can't get into the ride. And yet you're making them stand in line for hours. Verse 18, the work is too heavy for you. You cannot handle it, say it with me, alone. You can't handle it alone. Thrive, this is like the classic leadership. If you're a young leader, listen to this. This is such a classic leadership blunder. And let me just state it. Moses accepted the role that distracted him from his primary responsibility. He took on something that he should never have taken on. It wasn't his primary responsibility. Next thing you know, he's over his head. And this happens all the time at workplaces, marketplace, whatever, all the time. And sometimes this happens because the leader in the organization thinks he or she is the only person that can do it. I'm the only person that knows this stuff. I'm the only person that can pull this off. And sometimes this happens because the leader in the organization thinks, no one will do it, so I've got to do it. Now, let me just give you, I don't mean to offend anybody, but let me just give you a little heads up. Whether you're the top dog in the place, second in command, third, fourth, can I tell you something? And I don't mean to offend, but chances are you are not the smartest person in the organization. But I'm in charge. I didn't say whether or not you're in charge. What I'm saying is, you may not be the smartest person in the organization. Now, let me just kind of give you a heads up. At Thrive, I'm not the smartest guy in the organization. Guess who is? Kale. Am I right? Everybody knows Kale is like this. I didn't like that right there. Some of you, instead of clapping, you went. Some of you were board members. I don't know. But no, seriously, you know what I am? I'm just the leader, and there's a big difference. There's a big difference. You're not the smartest person in your organization, in your division. You are the division leader. You are not the whatever where authority where. Don't believe the assumption that just because you have a position means that you are the smartest person. Like here, if you are in the military, raise your hand, please. Ooh, I love you guys. Hey, listen. Listen, if you're a master sergeant, I guarantee you there are some tech guys and some staff sergeants below you that are smarter than you, that have skills in other areas that, yeah, you've got this. You have the positional leadership, which, by the way, is the lowest level of leadership. You're not the smartest guy in the organization. And I think Moses was going to learn this too. Like case in point, even around here, I get to be the boss. I'm the boss. I am the boss. Do you know why I get to be the boss? Because I got here first. That's why. That's why I'm the boss. I never took an IQ test. I never took any test. Lisa and I said, let's start a church in Grand Forks, North Dakota. We had 4 kids, and then we started telling people about a church that didn't exist in a building we didn't have with money that really wasn't there. Some people said, oh, okay. And the next thing you know, they're following us. We didn't know where we were going. The next thing you know, we got a church. That's why I'm the leader. That's why I'm the leader. I assure you, I'm not the leader because I'm the smartest guy in the church. The point is this. There is a trend in organizational life to do exactly what Moses did. Accept the role that distracts us from our responsibilities. And because of that, his entire nation was suffering, right? And so the story goes on. It says, listen now. And this is kind of like Jethro becoming like the consultant. He's in consultant mode now. He's like, listen now, and listen to me now, and I will give you some advice. And may God be with you. So he's like, listen, Moses, I'm here to help you. I know I'm just your father-in-law. I know I've only got a few guys on my team, and we just deal with a few sheep, and you've got 2 million people, and it's apples and oranges, but it's the same thing. If you'll just listen to me, I think God's going to help you. You must be the people's representative before God and bring their disputes to him. Because here's the deal, Moses. Moses didn't understand his job description. You are like a priest. You are the priest to these people. You should have a priest robe on, not a lawyer or a judge's robe on. You're doing the wrong thing. You're doing the wrong thing. You're not Judge Judy. No, that's not you. You're the priest. You're the guy that brings the whole people's, not 1, 2, 3, the whole people's problems to God. That's what God has ordained you to do. Not to sit here and try to figure out what's wrong with that guy's chicken or that guy's tent. That's not what you're here for. You're not here to do individual, personal. You're here to do national. You're supposed to run the whole thing and be God's representative. And so the deal is, Jethro's telling his son-in-law, dude, you're in the weeds. You're just in the weeds. You're in the weeds too much. You're doing too much of the minute stuff. And in verse 20, it says this, teach them. This is Jethro talking. He says, teach them his decrees and instructions, and show them the way they are to live and how they're to behave. In other words, man, come on. You be the representative of God to them, and you represent them to God. You are to teach his decrees. And so he teaches them how to do this. He says, here's what you need to do. You need to start teaching these judges how to be judges. What judges? No, you're going to find the best guys, the most qualified guys, and you're going to pour into these people, and you're going to teach them what you do. You're going to teach them what you do so that they can do what you do, so that you can do what you're supposed to do. You following me? He's like, I should have had a B8. This makes sense. And so he says, okay, now be select. Verse 21. Be select. Be select. Start taking notes. Start looking at who's good in the organization. Look at the key players in the camp. And select capable men from all the people who fear God, trustworthy men who hate dishonest gain, and appoint them as officials over thousands, hundreds, 50s, 10s. See what he just did? He just kind of came up with an organizational chart, didn't he? It's not just Moses and everything. Now it's Moses, people, more people, more people. And Jethro, he's going, I'm just telling you, if you're going to be able to sustain this, if you're going to lean into the thing that God has called you to do, if you don't do something, you're going to go crazy. You're going to lose your mind. You're going to drive people away. Your organization isn't going to be healthy. You'll have to figure out how to reprioritize your time. Because I know what you're thinking, Moses. Well, I don't have time to find all these people. If you don't, you'll die. If you don't, you'll die. And so in verse 22, he's like, have them serve as judges for the people at all times. He said, you're going to train the judges instead of being a judge. You're going to be the priest, which is what God wanted for you in the first place. Look at what it says in verse 23. If you do this and God so commands, you'll be able to stand the strain, and all these people will go home satisfied. Here's what I know. I know this for sure. That when I try to do everything, let my people go. No, just sorry. Here's what I know. When I try to do everything here at Thrive Community Church, I get my nose in things that it shouldn't be. I booger it up. I mess it up. I bring strain on myself and the organization. I do. And I can't stand the strain and the pressure. And I know that the people here aren't satisfied. My team, the staff, they're not satisfied when I'm poking around doing things that I'm not supposed to do. And I'm learning. And Jethro says, Moses, look, you know what? You're going to experience less stress, less strain if you'll give up something you should have given up a long time ago and focus on your unique roles in this organization. And then I love verse 24. It says, Moses listened. Most people don't listen to this because they think they're giving up power. No, this is leadership right here, guys. Moses listened to his father-in-law and he did everything he said. So for you, the takeaway today is this. You've got to discover and figure out your unique contribution to the organization that you work. If your boss is here, have a little meeting, not today, but some kind of meeting, and kind of talk through this. Say, am I doing the right things? Are you doing the right things? I don't want to get in the middle of stuff, but maybe we should talk about who's doing what so that we're maximizing our talents and our abilities. Now I'm going to give you four quick things. Write them down. Four quick things if you're taking notes. Number one, you people, all of us. Number one, you've got to discover what you are not good at. And look for ways to eliminate those things from your schedule. Like there's some things here I am not good at. And I know that. Number two, identify the areas that make the greatest or biggest impact and contribution to the organization. So like for me, I love the vision stuff. I'm creative, so I think artsy-fartsy all the time. I like to preach, and so I like doing, so three things. There's my three things basically. Number three, give your best time to what makes your biggest impact. In other words, my three things I should be giving about 80% of my time to. Yeah, I still have 20% where I have to do other stuff, but in that sweet spot, I've got to work. 80% of my time needs to be in those qualities that I am here for. Number four, you have to allow other leaders to lead. And you know what? They may not do it as well. And that's okay. Like, it was hard for me to give up the bulletin, 5-6 years ago, because I like graphic design, I like doing this stuff, and so I had to hand it off. And sometimes I'd look at it and I'm like, well, I wouldn't have done it that way, right? And finally I just had to get to the point, bless their hearts, they're doing great. And unless there's a huge typo or something, I'm not even going to talk to them about, oh, I might do it this way or I might fix it. Because you know what? God is now using them and it's off of my plate so that I can do the things that God brought me here for. Now, here's the last thing and then we're done. The regular churchgoer who says, oh, I came to hear a sermon, not a leadership talk. Well, listen, this is how this becomes your sermon. Because this very thing works at home. If you really think about it, you should be doing the things that you are really good at. I don't do the bills at our house. You know why? Because Lisa is great at that stuff. She's great at it. I have she money. You know, that I got some money she don't know about, but other than that, listen, here's how this becomes a spiritual thing for all of us. I know that when I am in the sweet spot of what I'm supposed to be doing here, I come home as a different guy. When I've been in the weeds of other departments, I come home stressed, strained, tired, up to my eyeballs with pressure, and I'm just grumpy. But when I have worked in the areas that God brought me here for, it's a good thing. And you know what that allows me to do? It becomes the conduit by which I can effectively live out love. When my heart is right, when I'm not completely stressed, my heart is more open to love people. And one of my favorite scriptures in the Bible is 1 Corinthians 13. Tell me, husbands and wives, if you would love your spouse. Bosses, tell me if you would love your workers, your co-workers, your subordinates, whatever you want to call them. Subordinates, can you just imagine your boss showing up to work with this in his heart or her heart? Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It is not rude. It does not dishonor others. It's not self-seeking. It's not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. You know when love fails? We're stressed out. When we're doing stuff that we're not supposed to be doing. And so I would just encourage you. Talk this through this week at your office, on the base, at the store, wherever you work. Talk about it as a family. Are you doing the things that you are supposed to be doing? And then let God bless you through that. Would you stand? After I pray, you're dismissed. We're running late. Don't want a mutiny in children's department, so we'll let you go. I love you guys. Thank you so much for coming. I hope you sense that God is on the move here because He is. Let me pray for you. Lord, thank you for what you're doing at Thrive. And it's not about me. Yep, I get to be the point person, but there's way smarter people here than me. Use our team, Lord, to accomplish what you want to accomplish. And for those in this audience today, I pray that you would help them to gravitate towards those 2 or 3 things that they're good at. And let them run wild for you. In Jesus' name. And all of God's people said, amen. Hey, this week, don't just live, thrive. God bless you, everybody. Have a great Sunday.
Oh, to Jesus I surrender. I do. Well, no, maybe that. I've got the low controller. I do still have mercenaries, but I packed up to 360, so.
That's right, you got a one now.
I do. I've only got one controller for it too, so what good is that?
Well, that's why they call it an Xbox One. See, that's supposed to do multiplayer on it.
No, it's yeah. What are you up to these days?
Oh,